Chapter 5. Blades and Bonds. Fredric and Arina had just left the bustling town of Windmond behind, the sun climbing steadily in the sky. The road stretched out before them, leading northward through a mix of rolling hills and dense woodlands. Fredric, eager to test his new sword, swung it around enthusiastically, mimicking the moves from his father's old stories. "Careful with that," Arina called out, her tone firm yet tinged with a hint of amusement. "That sword is not a toy, Fredric. It's a tool for survival. Treat it with the respect it deserves." Fredric halted his playful movements, his face flushing slightly with embarrassment. He lowered the blade, looking at it more thoughtfully. "Sorry," he muttered, glancing at Arina. "I'm just excited. I've never had anything like this before." Arina nodded, her expression softening. "I understand, but remember, every swing should be purposeful. You will need to rely on that sword more than you know in the days to come. Let's use this time to start your training properly." They walked for several hours, the day gradually giving way to dusk. The trees cast long shadows over the path, and the air grew cooler. Eventually, Arina decided it was time to stop for the night. "Let's set up camp here," she suggested, pointing to a small clearing by the side of the road. Fredric nodded, setting down his pack and gathering some dry wood for a fire. As Fredric worked to start the fire, Arina scoured the surrounding area for suitable materials to create a training dummy. She gathered a few stumps and large sticks, assembling them into a simple yet functional figure. The crude dummy stood upright, ready for Fredric's practice. The fire crackled to life, casting a warm glow over their makeshift camp. Fredric stood by the flames, watching Arina as she finished securing the dummy. "This will do for now," Arina said, stepping back to admire her handiwork. She turned to Fredric, her expression serious. "Now, let's begin your training." As the fire flickered and crackled behind them, Fredric stepped up to the makeshift training dummy, gripping his sword tightly. Arina watched him intently, her arms folded across her chest. "Show me a few swings," Arina instructed, her voice steady. Fredric nodded, taking a deep breath to steady his nerves. He swung the sword in a few hesitant arcs, the blade cutting through the air with a faint whistle. However, his movements lacked precision and fluidity, betraying his lack of training. Arina watched Fredric's swings with a critical eye, her brow furrowing slightly. When Fredric finished, she stepped forward, her expression unreadable. "Your form needs work," she remarked, her tone condescending. "You're swinging too wildly, wasting energy on unnecessary movements, and your grip is all wrong." Fredric's cheeks flushed with embarrassment as he listened to Arina's critique. He had hoped for encouragement, not criticism. Nevertheless, he forced himself to remain composed, determined to learn. "I'll try to do better," Fredric stammered, readjusting his grip on the sword. Arina nodded, her gaze softening slightly. "Good. Remember, every swing should be deliberate, controlled. Focus on your breathing, and let the sword become an extension of yourself." With Arina's guidance, Fredric resumed his practice, his movements gradually becoming more fluid and purposeful. The evening stretched on, the sound of clashing steel echoing through the quiet night as Fredric worked to master the art of swordplay. As Fredric continued his practice, Arina's patience began to wear thin. With a sigh of frustration, she stepped forward, her movements fluid and precise, and took the sword from Fredric's hand. "Watch closely," she instructed, her voice firm but not unkind. "Pay attention to my footwork." With that, Arina launched into a demonstration, her movements a dance of grace and precision. Each swing of the sword was deliberate, each step calculated for maximum efficiency. Fredric watched in awe as Arina moved with a confidence and skill that he could only hope to emulate. As she finished her demonstration, Arina turned to Fredric, a hint of impatience still lingering in her eyes. "Now, try to mimic what I just showed you. Remember, it's all about control and balance." Fredric nodded, his determination renewed. He stepped back up to the training dummy, the memory of Arina's demonstration fresh in his mind. With a newfound focus, he began to swing the sword once more, his movements more deliberate and controlled than before. While Fredric practiced his swordsmanship, Arina took charge of preparing their meal. She expertly arranged a pot over the fire, filling it with a hearty stew that she had packed for their journey. As the flames crackled beneath the pot, she began to give Fredric instructions, her voice blending with the comforting sounds of the fire. "Keep your stance steady," she called out, her attention divided between the stew and Fredric's training. "And remember to follow through with your swings. It's not just about power, but technique as well." Fredric nodded, absorbing Arina's words as he continued to swing the sword. Despite the fatigue creeping into his muscles, he remained determined to improve, spurred on by Arina's guidance and the prospect of their journey ahead. As the hours passed and Fredric's fatigue became apparent, Arina seized the opportunity to impart a crucial lesson. Drawing her own sword, she instructed Fredric to stand ready, his protests falling on deaf ears. With a swift motion, she swung toward him, the blade glancing off at the last possible moment. Despite Fredric's initial shock, he quickly rallied, applying the techniques he had been practicing in self-defense. Arina pressed the attack, forcing Fredric to react instinctively, his movements fueled by a mixture of fear and determination. After a tense few moments, Arina finally relented, lowering her sword as Fredric caught his breath. With a stern expression, she explained the significance of the exercise. "In battle, your opponent won't wait for you to rest," she said firmly. "They'll strike when you're at your weakest. You must learn to be ready at all times, Fredric, no matter how tired you may be." As Fredric caught his breath, the weight of Arina's words settled heavily upon him. The realization that in the heat of battle, there would be no respite, no moment to recover, left him feeling vulnerable and exposed. Arina's eyes bore into his, her gaze unwavering as she continued, her voice carrying the weight of experience. "Your life will depend on your readiness, Fredric. Every moment, every movement could be the difference between victory and defeat. Remember that." Fredric nodded, the gravity of Arina's teachings sinking in. Despite the exhaustion that coursed through his limbs, he understood the necessity of being ever vigilant, of honing both his body and mind for the trials that lay ahead. As the warmth of the fire enveloped them, Fredric's curiosity bubbled to the surface, seeking solace in conversation amidst the quietude of the night. With a hesitant glance towards Arina, he ventured forth, his voice a gentle interruption to the tranquility that surrounded them. "Arina," he began, "where did you learn a fight like that? I mean, I didn't think the mage would be so skilled in swordplay." Arina's gaze softened, a hint of reminiscence flickering in her eyes as she regarded Fredric. "I am an Imperial Guard elf," she explained, her tone tinged with a sense of duty and pride. "From birth, we are destined to be soldiers, possessing a natural affinity for combat. But much of my training and experience came from my travels with the mage." She paused, the crackling of the flames punctuating the quiet as memories resurfaced, threading through the fabric of her past. "We faced countless battles together, each one shaping me into the warrior you see today. There is no substitute for experience, Fredric, and I have learned from the best." Fredric listened intently, a newfound respect blossoming within him as he glimpsed the depth of Arina's dedication and the trials she had overcome. In her words, he found a glimmer of understanding, a shared journey that bound them together amidst the uncertainty of their quest. As the night unfurled its velvet embrace around them, Fredric's curiosity danced on the precipice of his lips, seeking entrance into the troves of Arina's experiences. With a hesitant smile, he dared to breach the veil of silence once more. "Arina," he began, his voice a soft ripple against the canvas of the night, "would you mind sharing a few of these stories with me? I'd love to hear more about your travels." Arina's grin widened, a playful glint illuminating her features as she welcomed the opportunity to regale Fredric with tales from the labyrinth of her past. With each word, she wove a tapestry of adventure and peril, her voice a melody that carried them through the corridors of memory. As the hours waned and the embers of the fire ebbed into the darkness, Arina's stories painted a vivid tableau of distant lands and harrowing encounters. Fredric hung on her every word, enraptured by the cadence of her voice and the vibrant tapestry she unfurled before him. Together, they lingered in the realm of storytelling, their laughter mingling with the whisper of the night breeze as they forged a bond that transcended the confines of their journey. And as dawn tiptoed upon the horizon, they found solace in the camaraderie of shared tales, united by the threads of their intertwined destinies.